Hi, EQUUS herd. We have we have one of our biggest AMAs this month with this one. Very excited to see you all. There are a lot of folks showing up on the video. There's a ton of folks showing up with their videos off. That's totally fine. However you're showing up today is great. Welcome, everybody. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started, because we have a brief hour together and lots of possibility for, you know, some juicy conversation. So this is our monthly series. For those of you that are new to this, it's called Ask Me Anything, or in this case, it's Ask Us Anything. We call them AMAs for short. And sometimes our AMAs are really just ask me anything. And it's a time to get together and just talk about life and talk about whatever's going on in our companies, with our families, with our own self-awareness journey. And some of our AMAs have a very specific topic, like tonight. Tonight is all about horse. And we have a lot of interested people here tonight. We record these AMAs, and all of you who are on the call today will have a follow-up email with a recording of this session. And before I go, I'll introduce Keith and Mary Ann in just a second. I just want to talk a little bit about the framework and just some basic Zoom protocols. It just seems like all of y'all already know what to do with Zoom, but keep your mic muted until you're speaking. If you have a question that you want to pose to myself, Keith, or Mary Ann, or all three of us, or two of us, or whatever, throw it in the chat, or you can raise your hand with there's a little icon down at the bottom of your screen. If you toggle your cursor at the bottom, you'll see a little smiley face thing, and it's reactions. You can do a hand raise. I may or may not see you. And so given how many people are on the call tonight, if you need to grab my attention, just go ahead and unmute your mic and just give a shout out so that your voice can be heard. What else? Because it's being recorded, if for some reason there's something that you're sharing or you're asking and you don't feel comfortable being recorded, you can request that we pause the recording for the time that you're speaking or asking your question or having your interaction with us, and that's totally fine. And this is just a space of shared learning and community building and curiosity, and I look forward to seeing what unfolds tonight. So I wanted to introduce you to Keith and Mary Ann. Keith, do you mind to just wave your hand and say hello? And Mary Ann, you too. I would love for you both to share what you do, who you are. Mary Ann is a dear friend to me and also to our EQUUS herd and our EQUUS community. She is a horsewoman, a soil scientist, and an equine positional release practitioner. And she spends time with our herd, helping them stay healthy and well. And her work is very special. And she will tell you just a little bit more about that. So Mary Ann, just a few minutes to share with us about you and the work that you do.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Kelly, and hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here and answer any questions you have. As Kelly said, I'm a equine body worker. I'm actually also a human body worker. I've studied a number of modalities, and the primary things that I practice are orthobionomy and something called equine positional release. And many of you are probably wondering what the heck those are. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. If you have any questions, please ask. But the basic premise is that these are non-force, gentle, non-force modalities that work with the body's wisdom and ability to self-correct and self-heal. And so through this work, the beauty of it is that we use comfortable positioning in order to show the body what its patterns are. And in the noticing and listening, the body is able to self-correct, working with proprioceptive reflexes. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that unless you have questions, but this sort of work is particularly nice for horses because it's pain-free and it's comfortable. And with horses, they're not on a massage table and we can't go, where does it hurt? So it requires that we dialogue with them. And many times with horses, once they discover that the work is pain-free, it provides release and that they're able to interact and express themselves, a lot of magic happens. So it's particularly wonderful working with all the things that I've studied. This has been the most profound for me. And with this work, we're facilitating, we're working with the horse. And so the changes come from within them. And so they tend to be lasting. That is a brief description. It's holistic work. We work with the whole horse. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Keith. Keith is also a dear friend, and he is my mentor in the Liberty work and horse training. Keith and I started working together with my horse Cisco, who had a trailering accident, and we weren't really sure whether riding him was safe or not safe. So we started to work together over that invitation and challenge. And since then, we've been doing a lot of work together. Keith has trained horses, does train horses for TV and movies. He's trained horses for the police force and for medieval times, and he's a stunt rider as well. So Keith, over to you, just a couple of minutes to tell us more about you.
Okay, well, as Kelly said, I've been in a variety of different types of horse work for about 4 decades professionally now. Enjoyed horses as a kid, never had any lessons or anything as a young man. Always knew I wanted to be a stunt man. Got a chance after I got out of the Army I was working at Walt Disney World and got a chance to go to work for Medieval Times. That's where my equine education really began. Was fortunate enough to meet a mentor who mentored me for over 30 years, who was Walt Disney World's head trainer for 36 years. He did movie and TV work, which I found fascinating, along with almost every other aspect of horse training that you can imagine. And so that journey helped bring me to where I'm at now. It helped me get my start really in the stunt industry as a horseman, doing stunts for movie and television, and then later training horses to do stunts as well as other things for movie and television. I had worked for, as Kelly said, Medieval Times, Walt Disney World, Universal Studios Florida, among others. But the focus of the majority of my work now when I'm not on a movie set is working with individuals to help them build and improve better relationships with their own horses, and to hopefully to promote this work so that the next generation will have the opportunity to have a chance to learn what I had passed down to me. And I want to pass it on to the next generation, so that my mentor used to say, we owe it to the next generation to let this work die with us. And I take that very seriously. So here we are.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Keith. So, the common ground that Keith and Mary Ann and I share is this, this service to the horse. And it really is, it's not really just about horses. It's a way of life. It's how you listen to a moment. It's how you build relationship. It's how you work with another rather than try to coerce or manipulate or force another. And so even if you're not horsey and you're here today, listen for ways that this way of life, whether it's equine positional release or liberty work or training or horse husbandry, that there are some invitations to a different way to live, to lead your company, to be with your family. There's just so much in this. So when you ask questions tonight, and there's no bad question, any question can be here. You may find that, for example, Keith and I may not agree on something, or the three of us may have a completely different take on the same thing if the question is open to all of us. As Keith said to me this morning on a ride, diversity makes us stronger. So that's okay. Take what resonates for you, leave the rest. And so we're just going to open the floor. We do have some questions that were sent in advance, but you all are here now. So we'll open the floor to any of you who have questions about anything to do with anything. Doesn't even have to do with horses necessarily, because it all relates.
Looks like there's no questions, Kelly. I should go out and start training again.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Barbara. Hi, Barbara. Nice to see you. Hey.
Hi, nice to see you. Question, I work with therapy horses. I've been a volunteer for about 15, 16 years. And my big thing right now is I'm just wondering, what kind of tips do you have to assist or to ensure the mental and emotional health of these animals? I mean, they just go through unbelievable issues, and they're saints, as are lesson horses. But I just, as a volunteer, I really do you have any ideas? I mean, I try and show up for them being calm and trying to get the work done, what I'm supposed to do and things like this, but I'm sure there's a lot more I could be doing just as a volunteer.
Mary Ann, this sounds like your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I'm happy to address that. I actually am the body worker for a equine therapy horse organization here in Santa Fe, and work with a number of those horses. And you're absolutely right, Barbara, those horses are asked to do quite a bit. And oftentimes, I'm not sure how it is with your organization that you're with, but many times those horses have already had quite a life before they come to the therapy world. Is that the case? And sometimes already come with aches and pains, certain traumas and this sort of thing. And so what with the work that I do, I have found it to be really nice to work with those particular horses. And so much about it is really seeing them, right? There are some really nice, and helping them, doing simple things to help them notice that you notice what their issues might be, whether some of the horses I work with are withdrawn, they are achy, some of them get tired of the work. And so there's a whole variety of ways you can address the physical issues, but also the emotional issues. And it's amazing how just the art of being present and noticing and listening and just being with them in that way can help them release a lot of stress. I know lots of simple techniques. You are welcome to find me somehow. Kelly can let you know. I can let you know some really simple techniques that can provide that are easy to help provide some relief for those horses.
Yeah, can I add, Mary Ann, this thing that you say about seeing them, can you talk more about that? Because it's seeing them in a particular way, right? It's not really seeing them with pity or with like,
okay.
Can you talk about that?
In my work, it's not all about, but a lot of it is about patterns. We develop physical patterns, we know that, but we also develop emotional patterns. And in the fields like of orthobionomy, equine positional release, it is about helping, whether it be horse or human, but let's talk about the horse, them to recognize what their pattern is. So that, because the only way to correct a pattern is to know that you have it. And just like us, a horse that is working hard, that has certain trauma patterns, by us noticing that, they can notice it and they can do something about it for themselves. So we can facilitate that by showing them, and that can be really often it's just listening and observing. They will show you, and then you can help feed back to them another way to be. And again, just so many times when I'm working with a horse, it's like, oh my gosh, you noticed that I've got this thing going on. I'm all pent up. I'm nervous. I don't like people to touch me. And once they realize that you've noticed it, all of a sudden there's an avenue and something opens up where they can self-correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really powerful. Yeah. Great. So Carol, you've had your hand up.
Yes, hello.
Carol.
I am interested in the soil scientist part of Mary Ann's work. And as it relates to horses, as a veterinarian, I work with horses. Diet really matters to horses a lot. And I find there's an increasing number of illnesses just related to diet. And as I got really invested into exploring that, I discovered the feeds were deficient and they were sick, and the grasses were sick and the forages were sick. But as I kind of dug deeper and deeper, I discovered actually it's the soils that are sick. And that just ends up coming full circle around to our horses. And I guess one of the, and I think there's a lack of science in this area, but I think glyphosate or Roundup really creates a lot of problems, especially with the tight junctions in the horse's body. And I can do a lot of things with diet. I can get them to survive, but without that proper diet, it just seems I can't get them to thrive. I can only bring them so far. Do you have any ideas, any suggestions, any comments with that?
Well, first of all, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've got this bumper sticker I've carried around for a while, and it says, let's stop treating our soil like dirt. And I'm thinking about lately putting that on my car. It's a big issue. And I could go on and on about that like forever. But the thing is, it's the holistic part of the puzzle, right? I was just talking to somebody yesterday who has an insulin resistant horse, and looking at their hay analysis and looking at the high iron, and this has to do basically with where this, and really researching at where the hay came from. It's from some acidic soils, and so there's getting more iron uptake, blah, blah, blah. And so we were just discussing the fact that, and even with horses that have metabolic problems, I mean, body work can be of assistance, depending on what it is. I mean, in terms of helping circulation and all of that. But if you don't look at the diet and the whole picture, I mean, every situation is going to be different, but you absolutely have to do that. And so you disappeared. Oh, there you are. I think that as horse people, we need to just become more informed about the quality of the ingredients that we're feeding our horses, because it really, really makes a huge difference. And sometimes it's just a little thing, like in this case, looking at this hay analysis and the iron concentrations, that all the work this particular individual had put into all these other things, that aspect, which again goes back to the soil that the crop was grown in, has to be, addressed. So I'm someone who has, as a scientist, I always feel like there is an answer, right? And I've spread myself out into, herbs and homeopathy, and I'm not someone who, I think that you look at, Eastern and Western medicine to solve some of these issues, and but you can never just say there's not often just a magic pill. It's the holistic approach that's important in my view. That was a long-winded answer.
Does that help, Carol? Is that?
Yes, and no, in some ways. It's kind of just restating, the problem, and as the increase in these metabolic horses grow, their quality of life is poor, and they're palliative for almost the last decade of their life. And I find herbs and all the holistics, and yet it just still goes back down to the soil. It's still, I can get them to come along and thrive fairly good and manage it, right? But I never get them to the place where they're actually thriving. They're always a lot of them in food comas almost with the sugars. And over the last couple decades, if I've been doing forage analysis, I find that originally it was the sugars that were really high and often it was troublesome for the horses. But now I'm seeing more and more mineral imbalances, and then it just wreaks incredible havoc with metabolism. So sometimes you have like maybe unreasonable sugars, but not sky high. But if you don't have the mineral balances for them, these horses just can't cope. And so as time is going on, it seems like the soils are becoming more and more imbalanced with their minerals. And of course, it shows in the horse's health.
Yeah.
Likely our health too.
Yeah, our health too.
Likely our health too.
Yeah.
It's I know here in New Mexico, it is also problematic to find local hay that is often affordable to people, that you have the soil is depleted, these crops are growing, the hay is being grown on soil that is depleted, but to then find and get access to hay that is being grown, treated well, is problematic, and it's difficult. And I do recommend to people that they get their hay analyzed. And it is quite amazing what you find in the variability. But yeah, it's definitely an issue.
Yes, my clients give me a hard time. I send them on the search for, they call it unicorn hay, and I go, yes, that's
Right.
Unicorn hay.
Right. Waylon, you've had your hand up for a while. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Kelly and team and everyone.
Hi.
I was up in New Mexico. I'm in Austin right now. I was up in New Mexico with my husband. We were kind of doing the trio from Albuquerque all the way to Taos, and then I chanced upon EQUUS and was really intrigued by the offering and thought, oh, this would be great for my team. So to take them on this experience, and particularly the leadership development piece. So then that got me curious, and I decided to join today's session. So thanks for having me. And my question is it's with horses, it's an intelligent creature, and it's a very intuitive creature. So for Kelly and team, how would you describe kind of how that all comes together and in your experience working with these animals?
And probably as most relevant for you, how does it all come together and teach leadership? Would that be?
That's
Yeah,
that's
great.
right.
So I think I'll take this one. But by all means, Mary Ann and Keith weigh in as well. So, as a coach, first and foremost, I found that, if I were going to ensure that my clients had meaningful, sustained change in their lives, that it wasn't enough to just have a cognitive understanding, say, for example, of a culture shift in my organization, or of certain leadership principles or narratives that people needed to start to take on, that just that kind of cognitive learning was not enough to create a real change for people, to really develop leadership in an embodied and powerful way. And so a lot of research points to the importance of experiential processes to make that happen. And this is why people do ropes courses and all of that kind of stuff, because people are getting in their bodies a kinesthetic sense of, different things like resistance and all sorts of elements that show up that are part of a psychology of leadership, but are actually embodied in leadership. The reason why horses are such a consummate partner facilitator for leadership is because you're working with a 56 million year old system. It's been around a really long time through tectonic shifts and climate spikes and comets and volcanic mega explosions. And they know how to lead their company. They know how to lead their organization. And it's not through power over. The whole Hollywood scene of the dominant, charismatic, forceful, dramatic stallion leading the herd is just a myth. The leader of the herd is the one who cares the most and who's the most present. And so when people are immersed in a herd system, the horse, and this is without anthropomorphizing them, from the horse's point of view, it's a very simple binary. You're either a predator or you're not a predator. And if you're not a predator, then you're part of their system. And the horses figure out pretty quickly, oh, you're not a predator, you're okay. Okay, you're part of us. And so it's intrinsic upon them to kind of bring people on, orient them towards this ancient 56 million year old leadership system. And they do it through modeling, through teaching, through mirroring back and reflecting. And so there's a layer of the process where horses are actively, deliberately engaging in humans because it's best for the system if humans get brought on board to that. And as humans, we have, a couple of thousand years experience in leadership. I think I would lean into 56 million years of wisdom over that. It's an evolutionary intelligence that you're tapping into.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in some circles, you would call this biomimicry for social innovation, looking to nature to solve our challenges as humans. And so let's look to 56 million years. So on one level, the horses are deeply engaging, very relational because they're animals of prey. And if you're part of their herd, if they don't bring you on board, you become a problem. You may not help them to get away from the lion as fast. You may not be as keen to know where the water is. So that's sort of how they think about it. On another level, and this is the level that's so fascinating to me, on a neurobiological level, you've got 5, 6, in our case, 6 very large nervous systems of the horse. And nervous systems are designed to attune to other nervous systems and influence other nervous systems. This is why you can walk into a room and someone who's in a bad mood can actually change the whole space, because your nervous system is feeling their nervous system. This is why we're wired to hold our infants close. Not only for feeding, but actually because our large nervous system informs their tiny nervous system about what it's like to be here on Earth and how to breathe and how to regulate our whole bodies. And so you've got these large nervous system positively influencing the nervous systems of the humans in the space. And just to way oversimplify it, the people's nervous systems are being open to new capacities, new possibilities, new learnings, without even cognitively understanding how or why it's working. And so they're kind of just getting a download, and they're getting a download about how to thrive, about how to lead, about how to take up space well, about how to project your energy across a field, all these like, executive presence, all sorts of ways. And so people leave with this open capacity to direct their lives and direct the people around them in a way that's very, very life-giving and powerful. So I love that, because there's the cognitive piece that's happening for people, and there's dialogue, and they're really learning. And then there's this other piece that's happening that you can't really explain, but people leave with. So would you add anything to that, Keith or Mary Ann? Or would you contradict anything I said?
Well, I think you've covered it pretty well, but when you talked about the larger nervous system informing the smaller nervous system, it brings to mind something that I heard not too long ago, that as humans, our nervous system is usually able to be sensed by others around us up to 3 to 4 feet away from us. With a horse, that's 15 to 20 feet away from them. So that gives you an idea of how powerful of an influence that can have on us if we allow it to. If we just open ourselves to it and allow it to.
Yeah. And horses, as animals of prey, they're very, very sensitive. They have to attune to their environment and read their environment and accurately read their environment, because if they miss a cue, they become lunch. So there's a kind of Rorschach that happens where horses are really tuning into the people who are in their midst, and they tell you the truth. They'll tell you the truth if they believe your request. If, like, for example, let's say somebody is working on inspiring others to come along with them, and they take their horse and they start going, and the horse is like, I'm not moving. It's because, and the reason why that might happen is because the person may be doing all the right things, but he's got an internal ambivalence or an internal unclarity. And the only way that those sorts of internal kind of inner game of leadership strategies get understood and seen is because the horse will show it. Whereas humans will say, oh yeah, he's doing it. He's doing the right thing. But if inside his inner posture is one of, say, ambivalence or some kind of agenda that's not clear, then the horse will be like, no, I'm not going to come along. And that's really fun, because then we get to kind of, well, what is that? What is that in this case, ambivalence? And work there, and then work with it. And then as soon as that ambivalence is cleared up, boom, the horse is going with them.
Cool.
Yeah. Mary Ann, would you add anything?
I agree with what you all said. Something that just popped into my mind that along these lines is the aspect of our relationship that we have as humans. We have a very old relationship with horses already. We now know that we have had 15,000 continuous years of being with horses at some sort of partnership level. And that is one of my mentors points out. When you think you don't have a relationship with a horse, it's already there.
Yeah. Even if you know nothing about horses, it's a sort of legacy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they know that. Horses, people come in and sometimes feel like they're imposters, and that, what are they doing in this arena? But the horse knows that there is a long enduring kinship. It's very, very special to experience. Yeah. And so because of that kinship, thanks, Mary Ann, because that's a great sort of segue. in spite of the size of the horses, in spite of people being afraid or having had, maybe reticent to work with horses, there is this tangible safety that happens in the arena, and people just sort of fall into that safety, and they take more risks, they learn more deeply, they trust their learning process more because there's just this welcoming safety that happens. And it can even be that we've had people who don't really want anything to do with horses and don't really want to kind of go into those spaces, end up being the one who's having the most outrageous time, having the most impactful learning, and with the biggest horse. So yeah, Andrew.
If I could just add, and I'm adding something as a leadership development coach, not as a horse person. Okay, so please, I'm not worthy to talk about the horses, but just to add one thing. So it's one thing to understand all of the points you're making. It's another thing to feel it in your body around the horses. And that's the magic, that's the experience. That's the thing, to just wander onto the property and just, experiment with something, because it's one thing to understand, it's another thing to feel it. So from a leadership development point of view, we can talk about presence and emotional intelligence and trust and communication and safety. But if you don't feel the difference, and by the way, the horse isn't the only way to do that, but the horse is a magical, unconscious, totally cool way to do it. In my experience, it's cognitive, and leadership isn't cognitive. Or not simply cognitive, maybe a better way to put it. Okay, I'll be quiet now.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. That's a great perspective.
Well, I'm so sorry. I have to jump on a work call, so I tried to get my question in, but Kelly, I'll be in touch, and I just appreciate all your insight. So thank you again.
Terrific.
Yeah,
I look
thanks.
forward to talking with you, Waylon. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks
Okay.
all.
Bye. So we have someone in the chat. Hi, everyone. This is Lisa. Hi, everyone. Listening to this conversation, I'm wondering how the ways that horses trust and connect differ from the way humans do. Historically, my conception is that collectively, the perception of the role of horses in our world is very different than it was 50 or even 20 years ago. So from that lens, I'm wondering about from all three of us, your feelings about trust. Keith, I'm going to hand it to you.
Okay, that's a good point, Lisa, that the way that we perceive our relationship with horses now versus 20 or 50 years ago has changed dramatically, because there has, at least for most people, and it's not for everybody, but for most people, because most people for many, many years looked at a horse just like people now look at a tractor or a truck. It's a tool, it's a vehicle, it's a means of accomplishing what I need to accomplish and helping me get my work done. And for most people, it didn't go beyond that. But with that being said, my mentor used to tell me there's a term that's started in the last 20 years or so called natural horsemanship, and it's all the rage and everybody wants to do it. It's having a natural relationship with your horse instead of forcing your horse to do things. And my mentor would say to me, he said, I hate that term, natural horsemanship. And I said, what's wrong? I think it's a wonderful concept. He said, it is. But now the term has come out and everybody jumps on the wagon and thinks that's all it is I just going to make friends with my horse and that takes care of it. There still is a leadership required both from the horse and for the horse. Okay. The horses look to us for their safety, for their food, for all of their needs to be met. Okay. What they give us in return for that can be so much greater than what we even ask for, because oftentimes they know what we need better than we do. So as far as the trust is concerned, and as far as how it differs between humans and horses, my biggest point to that is that with humans, it takes us a long time to gain trust from most people. Most people start out a bit mistrustful until they get to know you, and then over time you develop trust. Horses, if they've had particularly bad experiences, then it takes a while to regain their trust. But unless they've had some trauma, horses are very quick to offer their trust, and you don't have as much to go after it as you have to accept it and return it. And that's one of the other things my mentor used to tell me: if you want your horse to trust you, go first. You have to put your faith in them and allow and let them feel trusted, and then they return that trust. Because as Kelly mentioned earlier, if you're not predator, you're part of their herd. You're prey. You fall in one of the two categories: predator or prey. Okay. Now, as humans, you know, we are at the top of the food chain. Okay. So we can very easily fall into that predator category if we approach our horses as such. Okay. We also, if any of you ever been camping out when a bear's shaking at your tent, you know, we can also fall into that prey category. Okay. But we can connect with the horse on the level that they open to us. We just have to be open to that. And as I said, the difference in perception now, people, for the most part, we don't need our horses day to day to survive, to plow our fields, to transport us. Okay. So we're able to look at them in a totally different light. It's for either entertainment or utility, but less utility, more, for our unwinding time, our pleasure, as it were. But that, in my opinion, that behooves us to return the same kind of respect to the horse that we expect from the horse. And when we're able to do that and connect on this whole other level, I think it opens a world of opportunity for us and the horse to excel together. And that relationship, they've been doing this, as Kelly mentioned, 56 million years of horse wisdom, you know, and Mary Ann mentioned 15,000 years that we know that we have been interacting with them on some level. There's a lot of history there. There's a lot of connection there. And all we have to do is allow ourselves to be a part of it and tap into it. And it's a very empowering dynamic for both us and for the horse. And once you start showing up for your horse starts showing up for you, then it becomes a whole new level of relationship that goes beyond provider of food and recipient of food and provider of leisure, and it becomes a true bond that doesn't really, at that level, I don't think it differentiates between human or equine. I think it at that level, it's just, and that's what makes it to me so valuable, is because it transcends all of that, and it's at the most pure level, species non-specific. Does that address your question at all, Lisa?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your reflections. And I think some of you kind of answered the question before, like after I put it in the chat too. You know, it seems like there's so much nonverbal communication that goes into what we bring to the concept of trust, and kind of the decisions that we maybe tacitly make about trust. I'm talking from the human perspective, maybe also from horses, but yeah, it's fascinating. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I wanted to add, thanks, Lisa. It's a great question. It's good to see you, Lisa, by the way. It's good to see you. You know, what you remind me of, Keith, is just, and this is, you know, what we would say in the coaching world, a shift from transactional, you know, relationship to, you know, more of a mutualism, right? And and I'll never forget, once I was working with a client who had a horse, and he said something that was just the epitome of a transactional relationship. He said, because the horse at the time was not trusting him. The horse would not come to him. The horse, you know, he'd show up after a long day of work, and the horse would take one look and turn the other way and run off, which drove him insane. And he said, you know, damn it, you know, I come here and I feed him and I pay his bills. The least he could do is show up for me. And I was like, transaction. Let's see how far that's gonna take you. So yeah. Mary Ann, anything to add there?
No, that was well said, Keith. I think that it's nice for me to see in the world that there's a lot more interest now in having and developing relationships with horses and the value of it versus treating horses like they're a car in the garage and come Sunday, they better be,
Right.
working well and tuned up. And in my work, you really find how well the horses respond when they're so many of them are used to just being told what to do, are forced to do, and they just become sort of shut down. And when you offer them an opportunity to participate and listen to them, it's a whole nother ball game. And with the work I do, it does not work if the horse does not feel safe. They have to feel safe for changes for healing to happen. And trust is key to that. So sometimes with a horse, I work with a horse, and the first time I meet them, they have no trust in the human. And so the exercise becomes in building trust. And maybe next time we'll talk about that shoulder that has limited range of motion. So it's super important.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. And it's true for all beings, so this applies across the board. Time has flown. We have 3 minutes, and then I just wanted to talk about the work that Mary Ann is doing here in August. Probably, maybe physically, maybe virtually, but definitely importantly, and then Keith, his work here. But there's a question here from Carol. We'll answer that briefly before we start to close. How does one show up for the horse in a language that they understand? I love that question. For me, I learned a lot through hanging out with herds and watching their physical gestures on how they mirror each other to show friendship, and different kinds of postures and gestures that horses do as a way to communicate certain things. There's a book called Horse Speak by a woman named Sharon Wilsey. There's a lot of different books like that out there. That's one of my favorites. I don't follow it to the letter, but it certainly opened the door for me personally about starting to see, oh yeah, when we both, when I approach the horse, not to just approach without pausing for a moment and checking in with them. And when the horse suddenly looks out over the horizon, instead of insisting that they have their attention on me, maybe I'll do that too. Maybe we'll look out over that horizon together. Maybe we'll breathe together. And there's some just really simple ways to let the horse know that you're attempting to communicate on their level, and that makes a big difference. And I'll just hand over to Mary Ann and Keith. Is there anything just briefly you want to add to that?
Yeah, the only point I want to add to that is that, when you walk into a room, even with people that you've either barely know or don't know at all, you can tell almost immediately those who are ignoring you or those who are kind of saying that quick mandatory, oh, hi, and then do their thing. And then the people who are actually showing up and showing interest in you. Same for the horse. They will let you know. And if intent is half the battle. If you show up with the intent to listen to your horse and to show some respect to your horse, they're going to pick up on that and they're going to guide you. So don't be intimidated to try things. Horses are extremely forgiving. We screw up with them all the time. If our intent is good, they'll forgive. If our intent is not good, they'll read it like a book and they'll close down on you. But if you have good intentions, they'll pick it up just like you can with people in a room full of new people.
Mary Ann, anything? You're communicating to them all the time.
Well, I mean, horses are incredibly sensitive and they notice way more than we do. I'm always, it's like here at home, we have quite the herd to feed, and it's always interesting to me that going through mixing the supplements and doing all these things, and then and then there's that moment of like putting the fork down, and all of a sudden everybody heard that fork being put down and the knickers start, and you're like, I mean, they are just keyed in. And one of in the work that I do, which is a principle driven work, and one of the principles is less is more. And the horses really notice everything. When I show up for a horse, a lot of what you said, Kelly, is what I do. I mean, one of my mentors said the session starts when you're driving your car there. They already know. And, so just paying attention, saying hello, noticing their environment, how they interact, are they looking at you, all of that, or some horse, maybe they're not ready to look. I mean, just the noticing and listening is how I show up, and it looking at their gestures, because they're always talking to you. I mean, it's there if you notice, then you take the time.
Yeah. Wow, this has gone so quick. I'm really excited about this idea Mary Ann had for EQUUS in August. It's not fully formed yet, but if this interests you at all, the possibility is that her work with the EQUUS community could be virtual. We're also either coupling it or not coupling it with something like an actual workshop here at Thunderbird Ridge. But of course, a lot can happen virtually, and we can reach out to so many more of you. So if you're interested, please put your, just signal me in the chat, and we can put you on a special mail list to give you an announcement when we know more. But Mary Ann, do you want to just share a little bit about your ideas that are rolling around there?
Well, I can give it a whirl. It's not fully formed. One of the things I don't think I mentioned is that in addition to being a practitioner, I'm also I'm a certified instructor of equine positional release, and so currently I do teach classes in New Mexico and in other places as well. And those classes run the gamut of clinics that are to help people get certified themselves, or workshops to help horse owners and horse people just learn some simple techniques that can help their horses. And I think, like a lot of us, we've learned that it's amazing what we can do over Zoom. And so I'm thinking of some ideas to do some of the work through some Zoom efforts with EQUUS, but I haven't fully formed it yet. But in essence, there is one of the things that I love about equine positional release and orthobionomy is that the work is it's not hard to learn. It's complementary to other methods of healthcare, and it's amazing. Some very simple things we can do that can help our horses incredibly. And so some of the work with equine, I mean, there's theory, but there's also understanding more about horse gestures, the horse's nervous system, and a lot of other topics that go into the work. So I'm thinking about a process of being able to break down some like little classes into certain topics, where everyone can walk away with something they can do with their horses that will help them with either their relationship with their horses or certain physical issues, and that sort of thing. So, but it's in progress. I am planning on doing a clinic, hopefully at EQUUS, probably in August, but looking at some other ideas as well.
Great. Thanks, Mary Ann. Keith has been working alongside some of my clients, folks who have not been particularly horsey, folks who are very, very, very horsey, and who are kind of recovering from dressage trauma or hunter jumper trauma. And so there's a possibility to come here to Thunderbird Ridge and work with our herd and work with Keith. Keith, anything you wanted to share on that that's been your experience? Yeah.
Well, the one thing that I try to do differently from most instructors that I've seen in process is I try to keep in mind and hope that all of the people I work with keep in mind that at one time when we were kids and we were in awe of horses or whatever, there's a reason that we started following this path is because we thought we would enjoy it. We thought we would enjoy being with the horse, doing things with the horse. And unfortunately, we get in a point, especially those who are from a competitive background, where they have been maybe pushed or driven to the point, no, do this, it's all about heels down, shoulders back, blah, 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 all the technicalities. And I've worked with so many people who have just been so concerned about, I have to get it right or my instructor is going to be upset with me. I have to get this right. And it's all about, I have to get it right. And it's not about, I have to get it right. As I mentioned a while ago, horses are extremely forgiving. I try to help people return to the point of enjoying the process. If you enjoy the process, you will make progress from wherever you are, whether you're a beginner or whether you've been with horses for many, many years. If you enjoy the process, you will excel over time. If you don't enjoy the process, why be there, right? So if we're not enjoying our horses, then let's find something else to spend all our money on, because we all know that horses can be an expensive hobby, right? But let's go back and find that joy that we look for as a child. Let's try to incorporate that back into what we do, and the technicalities can come. That's a simple matter of putting the pieces of the puzzle together. But let's first figure out what picture we want to build with this puzzle, and let's start from there.
Yeah, great. People have a great time. Thank you both. So lots of ways to come to EQUUS virtually and physically and expand your equine repertoire. And we hope you'll join us. And a few people are already messaging me to get on the mail list. So, and then lastly, there's so much going on at EQUUS right now. There's so much. We are really starting to provide more and more opportunities to engage with us in different ways. I do a 8-week course called The Wisdom of Thriving. It's an online virtual course. And we meet weekly, and it's a deep dive into flying lead change. And we're doing a new cohort in July. I think it's July 6th is when we start. So you will all get a follow-up email with a recording of this conversation and information about Mary Ann's work and Keith's work and the Wisdom of Thriving. And we hope you'll join us. So it's time to let you go. We've got a couple of minutes. Anybody want to just little shout out, any one word you're left with just to close our time together? Mary Ann and Keith, thank you so much for your time that you were with us. It was great to share this space with you all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. You have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Great info.